Trey Smith covers the American Conference. CollegeGameTime.com. Content creator, also credentialed media joins. Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak on 365 Sports. Trey, thank you very much for your time. Who among these conferences, in your opinion, will add people first or most likely to? The Pac-12, the Mountain West, the American Conference, or none of the above?
Am I allowed to answer Stanford is the ultimate domino?
Sure you can. Absolutely. Yeah.
And maybe if I may, could I provide a little context to the tweet I believe y'all touched on Friday's show, which I appreciate that very much, as it pertains to kind of where we're at in this process with the Americans' sudden involvement in realignment season?
Yeah, you can. That's why we have you on the show today.
Perfect. All right. So first off, thank you for having me, and thank you for taking some time for the American Athletic Conference. And I know you guys actually give them coverage beyond just realignment. So I've someone who follows your show, very much appreciate that. But so Thursday night, I put that tweet up, and essentially what I was doing was providing an update in regards to some of the things that I communicated on my show the day before, right? Because last week, early on, there was a lot of smoke around Stanford and Cal to the ACC, the Atlantic Coast Conference. Mm-hmm. And so Wednesday, I just did a show exploring what Oregon State and Washington State to the American might look like. Simple as that. Obviously, geographically speaking, the Mountain West Conference makes the most sense. However, I was just looking at some other factors like media revenue, exposure, and things like that. No big deal. Well, then on Thursday, so that was the Wednesday show. Then on Thursday, the news broke that the ACC voted no to voting. And it seemed like things between the ACC and Stanford Cal were cooling down. Well, at that point, I received some information that I believe to be credible. And it was, in a nutshell, one, there's mutual interest between the Pac, particularly Stanford, and the AAC. Two, there has been communication between the two. Three, Stanford is the ultimate domino. And four, it will be an all or nothing type of deal. And so for me, you know, when I want to make sure everyone understanding my standpoint, when I was saying things are trending, it wasn't so much, hey, things are trending for the American to land these four schools. It was more of, if things are trending from the American's perspective, that it's going to be all four of them or none at all. And so that kind of clarifies that. Then we go into the weekend, and that's when we find out now Oliver Luck is consulting with the Pac, which I don't know if y'all have seen it yet, but Oliver Luck was probably a pre-scheduled months ago speaking event, but he was at FAU today talking with their football team, which, you know, the irresponsible conclusions my mind wants to draw from seeing that are going insane. But as I said, that was probably pre-scheduled long ago. But so he's hired as the consultant, and then a lot of rumors started flying around over the weekend, you know, and so then yesterday morning, I actually had a long conversation with a friend of mine who I know is also a friend of y'all's show, Jim Williams. I think you actually had his tweet up earlier on this show. And we were kind of talking through some different things and, you know, some information I have, information he has. And basically what he kind of shared with me was that Oliver Luck is going to fully, thoroughly vet out every possible option. And then I don't know if y'all saw Jim's report on this. I don't know if it was this morning or in the middle of the night, but basically what he had said was Oliver Luck will be starting the process of working on what teams should be added to the Pac-4 from the American and the Mountain. A list of about 12 teams will be reviewed. This does not mean a partnership or merger is off the table. It just means that they have a process in place. So from my vantage point, we got two options here. And kind of getting back to your original question, who's the first to add loose teams? If the Pac chooses to try and backfill with the Mountain West and the AAC, Yeah, that's on the table. But I have two questions. One, who's paying those exit fees? And two, who's the media partner going to be? The last time I checked, the Pac couldn't land a media deal when they had teams that were desired by the Big 12 and the Big 10. And so now we're going to repeat the cycle with teams that are desired by the Mountain West and the American. So that's one question. And then are we so sure that a media deal obtained by a backfilled Pac conference, will that command better exposure than what the AAC has right now? If they go full, something full streaming with Apple, like was thrown out there when they were trying to salvage the conference earlier this summer. So those are just some thoughts, around that first option. And then, of course, you have option two, which is a full-blown merger. And there are a lot of things flying around this as well. But for me, a true merger, if they do a true merger, the American Conference makes the most sense. And, you have a TV network already in place. The conference covers all time slots, and it gives ESPN that Pacific time zone, which I would think could be used in leveraging, exercising that clause and renegotiate the contract. You got big city and AAU representation, and you preserve the Auto 5 status. Now, I understand the Auto 5 status has lost a lot of its luster with the NIL and things of that nature as far as what its original intent was for. However, that Auto 5 status, which we like to call Power 5, it means something in recruiting. And recruiting is the lifeblood of every college football program in America. And so if you have an opportunity to save your Auto 5 status, a full merger with the American Conference gives you 18 votes in that pot. Because, the pushback I've seen is, well, they're going to get voted out anyway. Fair enough. Maybe so. But to kind of dispute something else that's floating around that Mike Oresco is considering offloading teams in his conference to make a merger work, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And then, of course, as I said at the top, Stanford is the X factor. And so I think the order of dominoes that need to fall are, first, is the ACC door closed? Is it 100% closed? Door number one. Door number two, I do think there will be another Hail Mary by Stanford to the Big Ten. Okay? So the door number two is, can the Big Ten be reengaged? I don't think so. I think most people will probably agree with that as well, but it's on the table. And then, would a merger be more enticing than just staying independent if you're Stanford? And that's where I think Oresco is in position right now. If he can lay out a plan for Oliver Luck, okay, basically potting or putting together a schedule module with the big city schools and the AAU institutions and saying, here's the type of schedule we could accommodate with Stanford involving the other three Pac schools. And then, at that point, I believe Stanford would be the ultimate decider. Are they willing to play with the AAU and big city schools of the AAC or not?
Yeah, Trey, man, there's a lot to unpack from just the entire scenario, and as you laid it out, there's a lot of moving pieces here. I mean, for example, you're speaking on the American and the Pac. I mean, where does the Mountain West fit in this as well? I mean, how much does that also complicate things, that there's, the potential of looking their way? Obviously, there's discussions happening on their end, so it's almost like a Frankenstein conference, if you throw them into the equation as well.
Oh, absolutely. And for me, and I know Mountain West fans have kind of been coming for my head lately over on my channel, but here's just some questions I have in response to that. Can the Mountain West make as strong of a case as the American pertaining to AAU institutions and big city schools? The media deal currently with the American Conference is much more lucrative and much more exposure. And the key piece here, and this is just me and what I've heard, I have what I believe to be credible information that there's mutual interest between Stanford and Gang, and the rest of the Pac schools with the American Conference. I get it. Interest is very vague, right? Just because I'm interested in a woman doesn't mean I'm going to marry her. But just because, but I have not heard that specific statement as it pertains to Stanford and the Mountain West. And then, of course, realignment season changes and moves and shakes so quickly. It seems like it was a month ago, but it wasn't even a week ago when Dennis Dodd just released his report, basically shutting down this idea that there was this plan for the Mountain West and the AAC and the Pac to all kind of unite together. And according to his report, it put it off on San Diego State. And then I know there was something that sort of disputed that, but I don't know. I look at the media partners with the American Conference, or the partner, I should say, and you've got ESPN, who desperately needs that Pacific time zone. You look at the Mountain West media partners, and both of their media partners are pretty beefed up with the additions the Big 12 and the Big 10 just got. So I guess those are kind of my thoughts as it's a compare contrast the American with the Mountain West.
This is me probably just off the top of my head, but Stanford, are you saying Stanford and the AAC?
No.
Okay.
Let me clarify. What I'm saying is that there's mutual interest, at least as of what was that, Thursday night? There is mutual interest between them and the conference. Like there's a mutual interest there, but like of the 4 remaining Pac schools, including Stanford. And I keep referencing Stanford because I believe, and this is just me, my belief is that really whatever they choose to do, everything else is going to kind of fall in line with that.
Yeah, I can see that. Where Stanford kind of.
Yeah, I don't think that Stanford's not going to become American. The Americans are going to become the Pac-12. Is what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that they're going to make. I think you mentioned about trying to make one more run at the Big Ten or whatever. But it just seems like some of those doors now are closed, especially with the Big 12 and the Big 10. Craig?
Yeah, that's why they would potentially, like he said, make another run at it to see if that's not a door that could open once more, or else, the rest of it falls in place, like you said. Who of the American teams right now, the fan bases, do you think are the most chewing on their fingernails, given just all of the stuff swirling, kind of like, as the Pac is dealing with their stuff, those 4 teams, particularly, though, Oregon State, Washington State, been a very stressful time. Are there any teams that you see kind of having that feeling as well right now in the American view in the landscape?
Yeah, I think there's teams on both sides of the fence. Right? I think there's teams like SMU and Memphis that really want that Auto 5 nod. And I think those fan bases are very tuned into what's going on, sitting and going, okay, are the stars going to align in such a way where we're still able to join a conference that has that status, or merge with a conference that has that status? Whether 2 years from now or a year from now, everyone's calling it the Power 2. I think you got fan bases like SMU and Memphis on that side. And then I think with some of the stuff that's circulating around, I should say the rumor mill, in terms of teams getting offloaded in order for a merger to happen, I think you have some of the newer additions that might be sitting out kind of going, well, wait a minute, are we going to get left out in the cold? Whether that be one of the 6 editions, such as Charlotte or North Texas or UTSA. I don't think so, personally. And to even speak a little bit more to that point, I think that it's very short-sighted to simply look at these new additions for what they are now versus what they could be with the additional revenue and resources that they'll be provided by the American Conference should things continue to stabilize, whether it's through a merger or just absorbing teams, whatever. I mean, look at a Houston or a UCF who is now, strong enough brand to get invites from the Big 12. Well, I mean, 10 years ago, that started with a conversation with Mike Oresco, getting those universities to commit to investing in those programs to become that over the course of time. And then now here they are in a Power 5 conference. I know that was a rabbit trail there, but that's just some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is. And Oresco, of course, we remember when Texas-Oklahoma story popped, all of a sudden there was the thought that the American was trying to raid the Big 12, and it went the opposite way. He seems to be, you have Petiti, who's new, Kliavkoff right now, who's looking for an island, and then obviously Phillips in the ACC, which he's been around a long time. Sankey with what he does. He runs everything right now at the SEC. But it seems like that Oresco, it's not at that level of Yormark, who's done an incredible job. But I think he might be, if he ever goes somewhere else, he could run one of the Autonomy 5 conferences one day.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, too, about Oresco, and I think we've seen, and I don't want to undermine anybody, but as it kind of pertains how this realignment season has worked out, like, if you spend any time with Oresco, and I don't want to misrepresent myself, I'm not like good buddies with him or anything. I've interacted with him at AAC Media Days, but you don't have to be around him long to realize, he's a fiery guy. He's got a little bit of what in his neck, and he's going to fight for what he believes in. Heck, the guy penned a master's thesis dissertation a couple of months ago about G5, T5. And so, if you don't think this guy is fighting for his conference and advocating for his conference to be a part of a potential merger that could involve that Auto 5 status, you're crazy. And I think that I agree with you 100% that he absolutely could run an Auto 5 conference.
Trey, thank you very much for your time. College Game Time also covers the American Athletic Conference, and he's right.